Right, so I had my lad come over yesterday to the workshop to help me bleed the brakes. Well, there were two issues. First and foremost, there was no fluid coming through. And the second issue was that every time he pushed down the brake pedal, I said, "Is it down?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Come on, then let it come up." Silence. 2, 3, 4. "No, but you're going to let me know the pedal's up." "Well, it's stuck down," he was saying. Stuck down? That doesn't sound right. So as you can see, it's all out now. Couple of observations. Now it's all out. The brake pedal doesn't stick down. Okay, well that's good. The servo, which is right here, clank, 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 can be compressed and spring straight back out again. It's got a bloody great spring in here, so that should work. And I'm thinking, well, what the fuck is the problem here then? Servos come with these adjustable push rods in them. So then I got to the brake master. Well, I undid both of the bleed nipples, sorry, both of the pipes that come on the edge of the brake master. You're very organised here, Richard. Come up there. Fuck off. Undid both of the pipes, and there was no fluid in either of these things. This is most odd. So the master cylinder is not pushing fluid through. So I undid those, nothing came out. Undid the two nuts that held it onto the servo, and the cylinder's moving its way forwards. Oh, right. So basically what's happening is the push rod on the back of the master, I'm not going to push it in now because I'm going to squirt bloody brake fluid all over my camera. The push rod on the back was already pushed in some way. And I suspect it's because the rod here wasn't correctly adjusted. So let's go through this and let's understand now. I can explain back to you now what the problem is with this, because I think it's fixable, but it's stupid. Right, so what I think has happened, servo goes that way up, Richard. What I think has happened is with the servo on the bench, the master cylinder was fitted. This is what I think happened. And then they thought, oh, there's a gap there between the push rod on the servo and the master cylinder. It's probably about a centimetre in there. You can hear the master cylinder slurping then and just dripping onto my bench. So what then happened was they adjusted the push rod. So you do that really by holding the centre shaft and getting a 7mm socket and undoing the centre pin. Okay? And they'd undone it to the extent that when the master went in like this, I know it's upside down, forget that folks, probably a little bit less than that, but not much less than that. So they would have lined it up like this. Notice there was a gap here. Yeah. Done the bolt up accordingly, and you can't hold the fork unfortunately when you're doing this thing up because the centre part of the push rod gets in the way. It is a bit of a faff. You can do it with pliers, by the way. So if I put that in there, I should be able to hold the centre shaft, and I can still do up the centre bolt. There we are. The alternative way of doing this is actually to install the servo and have someone push the brake pedal down. When they push the brake pedal down, that does that, and of course then you could see it. But this chap works equally well to go in there and adjust. Okay, now this is going to come out again. So, if I now present up the master cylinder, it's probably, let's Right, it's probably about 2mm out, so we'll just wind it back a turn. This is what I think has happened. This is not how to do it. Wind it back a turn. Yeah, it's about right. So we'll assume that that is in roughly the right position. Let's just get some blue roll. Not new roll, blue roll. Clean up the brake fluid. The annoying thing is I'd filled the slave up. Sorry, filled the master cylinder up with fluid. Okay, so then we'll take this and we'll clear off back to the car, which is, I'm going to explain now the reason why that approach was so shit. Oh, the Mac van's arrived. Okay, so I'm just going to put the push rod onto the back end of the pedal. Now, if I then push the servo right in and right home, see the pedal move? Should have done. The problem I've got is that when the servo fits onto the onto the pedal itself, there's not enough kind of, you can see the pedal's lifted right up here. So because of that, when it all bolts down, the servo's half used, this push rod's pushed further out, and then the bloody master cylinder's permanently engaged. It's the long and short of what I'm trying to say here. So you're doing this yourself. Get the servo fitted first, get it attached to the pedal with a decent sleeve bolt, then put the master cylinder on, then adjust the push rod. Is the way I would go with it. So let's do that. Okay, so I've popped the servo back in and I've put a nice sleeve bolt through on the, so there's quite a lot of activity going on here with loom and so forth. Put a sleeve bolt through from the clevis pin through to the actual fork. Sorry, what the fuck are you talking about, Richard? Servo's back in, 2 nuts, excuse all the loom and everything in the way here. Brake light switch is in place. Popped a sleeve bolt through the fork and the pedal. And in order to get that in place, the servo had to move probably about 1 centimetre. But the pedal is returning nicely. I've not put a nut on that bolt yet. I'll just do that quickly. Put down there. Bastard. Right. Show you how much it actually moved here. If I pop the bolt out, because the bolt is actually quite tight in the sleeve here. If I pull that out. Ready? Can we actually see what's going on here? Yes, we can. I pull that out, looking at the fork. There. Moved quite a way, didn't it? Right, so I'll pop that back in again, and then I'm going to be in the engine bay next. Servo's in, bolted up. If you remember, I kind of set it such that the push rod was clear of the master cylinder push rod when it all went together. And I was being pretty generous as well. It's probably still about 0.5 centimetre of play in it. Now I push this in, I can feel it touching the end of the push rod inside the servo, and I've still got about 0.5 centimetre to go on pushing this fully home. So well, first and foremost, I don't like this setup, I'll be honest. Secondly, the push rod was far too tight. So I'm just going to use my bent. That's not the right spanner. Let's use the right one, Richard. Eh? Let's use the right one. What have I done with them? There they go. Right, okay. Quarter. It's going to be metric, isn't it? So let's go for about a 7. Take that out first. That's good. Right. And that can come back out. Hold that in place. So holding the centre shaft in. I'll wind it in a couple of turns here. I suspect I'm probably going to need to. We're about 0.5 centimetre out. Now, this push rod is almost all the way in. Not quite though. What I really want to do is to have it such that the master cylinder can fit on snugly, bolted up flush to the face of the servo, and yet not move. If we can get this actually on, it would be helpful. There we are. There we are. That's right. So that's flush against the servo. Now, what I really need to do is to well, I need a second person really. That's where I'm going with this. So let's just, if I was to hold that there, is that going to stay there? No. What I might have to do is to put the top bolt in and then see how much slack I've got on the pedal and then adjust backwards as is appropriate. Because obviously we're clear of the master now, but I don't want the first half of the pedal travel to be taken up with making up the gap between the end of the pushrod in the servo and the end of the pushrod inside the master cylinder, if you get my drift. Hopefully you do. Right, let me find my sockets. Oh, what the fuck are you doing, Richard? Temperature's dropping. It's February, you prick. Oh yes, it is, isn't it? February. That'll do. Right, there we go. So that's, in fact, we just loosen that off just a tiny bit. No, I need to tight, don't I? I need to find out what play I've got in there. There's that. Doesn't really need a windy gun. Let's get the electric ratchets. They're a lot more useful. Put the other nut on, not this nut. It's going to end up being an outtake in here, Richard, I can tell you now. But this thing's going to have to come off again anyway, because I need to thread lock that push rod in place, which I really don't like the way it's fitted at the moment. Right, that can go on there. There we go, that's it. Marvelous. Tippity top. Right, throttle pedal. Yeah, it feels like it's about an inch of play at the top of the pedal there. So it would be more helpful if I had an assistant to work with me, that I could adjust the push rod, hold this in place, they could then push the pedal down and I could feel how much, you know, they are pushing it down before it starts to move this. That's the way I prefer to do it. Now that's probably the way I'm going to end up having to do this. But at least it explains to you the relationship, whoops, the relationship between the push rod, come on you stupid thing, fucking thing, undo. The relationship between the push rod in the servo and the push rod in the master. So I'm going to get this thing set up and then I'm going to see if I can get fluid through the system. Obviously you're going to have to reconnect all the brake lines and everything first, but get the fluid through the system and to the brake caliper. Right, so I don't need you in the way doing that. I'm going to put the radio back on. It's Friday, it's 4:30. The weather starting to look inclement out there. I need a coffee as well, another one. Drank the last one.